Good evening. Uh, hmm. So this will be my episode one of the season one, which I will entitle as the ideas that matter. And episode one will we will discuss a very simple topic. And this is a topic that I think many should, many lay people or many people who are interested in politics, they should have a firm grasp of what politics is all about. This is kind of basic, like it's like drawing from what I have learned in college. mm. So I'm gonna share it with you. So let's start discussing what is politics. Ano ba yung politika? Okay. Political science students know this by heart. And politics is basically from a theoretical perspective, uh, defined as the what you call that struggle for power. Politics is all about power. Politics is all about competition among and between people to or for power. And power here is defined based on Hans J. Morgenthau's uh, book on international relations. And this is basically a definition coming from the realist camp, the school of realism, I would say, as far as political science is concerned. So they define politics as that field where the participants, the actors, are struggling or in competition for power. And when they say power, they define it as that ability to control. So the ability to control and influence the minds and actions of others. So that's what power, when they say in politics what is power, that's actually they mean by it as their ability or one's ability to influence and control the minds and actions of others. That is as far as the theoretical understanding of politics is. So it is a struggle for power, and power defined as the ability to influence and control people's actions and as well as their minds. Okay, but at the practical level, politics is or can be understood as that we call that understanding that basically political actors or politicians are concerned with who gets what, when, and how. So, at the practical level, you can readily understand that politics is all about the strategic allocation of resources, and therefore it is very intimately connected to economy. That's why a lot of people are talking about political science, political economy, because you cannot actually separate the allocation of resources uh, in the way politicians and political actors conduct their business. So that essentially is what politics, again, from the theoretical understanding, it is a struggle for power among political actors or among political participants or politicians. And at a very practical level, it is concerned with who gets what, when, and how. And because resources are limited at the practical level, politicians must be wise enough, must be good enough, at understanding or identifying who are those that must be given by what and how such resources or such what may be given to them so that they can maximally or optimally influence the minds, on the actions of their intended audience. So In practical terms, politicians intend to influence the voters so that these voters will vote for them. So much so that in the local settings, as far as Philippine settings, there is what you call vote buying. There is that sometimes it gets really bad, like you know, those or the one who has the most money uh, wins an election. But in the more developed societies and countries in Western Europe, political activities mainly concerned with or limited with propaganda, with like branding. It's like marketing, politician being packaged by think tank, by groups of lobbyists, so that they could get the optimal impact on the audience, and they make use of heavily of advertising, political campaigns, and advertisements in order to sway the or to influence the uh, the uh, the voters, you know, or the audience and their intended audience. So basically, that's how what politics is all about. Again, it is concerned with power, and it is also concerned with how political actors, politicians will, maximally and optimally use their limited resources in order to get the best results from it. So in management terms, you're basically dealing with the effectiveness and efficiency of one's political campaign. I mean, if you have limited resources, then you have to think very hard on how to make the best use of that limited resources. So you have to aim for efficiency. But then you can only be efficient so much because you need to be very effective. And effectiveness here is being able to convince, being able to influence the voters or your audience. So uh, that is the balancing act that all politicians and political actors must get into. Now, that's the practical side of what politics is. On the theoretical side, uh, once a politician or has been elected in government, every day he has to engage people. He has to deal with his constituents. He has to deal with interest groups, and he has to deal with policies uh, that may or may not necessarily be accepted by the voters or by the constituents. So much so that the life of a politician is very much focused on trying always to divine the sentiments of the public, or for those who are really good, in trying to mold public opinion based on a political actor's desire. Very few in the history of government and politics, there are only very few people who can really effectively and efficiently influence the greatest number of people. And in majority, it has to be more than 50 or 51% at least. But in the West, a popularity rating of say 30% would be a celebration for some politician. But then again, the political audience or the voters in the West are not as political as they are in third world countries such as in the Philippines or in our country. So there is that difference. So basically, uh, you can always see that a wise politician should always be aware that he is dealing with people and he wants to be as powerful as he can be. I mean to say, he wants to be as influential as being able to control the actions and the thinking of his audience. And that would be uh, that can be carried out, uh, in many ways. You can probably use a diplomatic uh, approach. You can probably use a management approach, a technocratic approach, and there are so many ways to hold on to power or to be as powerful as you can be. So that is the essence of what politics is. Okay. I set it for only 15 minutes per topic. So this one would be, we're still we have still 5 minutes to go. So I think I can share also to you or with you those uh, topics related to, again, politics. There are those who, as I said, my definition of politics came from the realist school of thought, and that's precisely the idea of Hans J. Morgenthau. But there are those who say that politics is not so much about power as it is about principles, about ideology. Well, that may be, but if you really think and analyze uh, the field, it still boils down to the fact that you cannot pursue or you cannot make your ideas uh, into reality in a political and social setting if you would not have to have the power to do so. So it boils down again to the fact that as a political actor or political leaders, politicians must first aim for power. And whether they subscribe to the notion or they will subscribe to the notion that power is for its own sake, or they will seek power for its own sake, or they will seek power to advance ideological matters, and it's up to them. But the basic is that you cannot do it. You cannot do those things, no matter the ideas, the principles, no matter how lofty they may be. You cannot do it without having to engage at the basic level the concept of politics. It still boils down to politics. Politics as a struggle for power. It is power, and it is both in political science. It is both a problem and the solution. With power, as the movie on Spider-Man says, as anything related to power, too much power in the hands of one person tends to corrupt the person because uh, having much power means having much responsibilities as well. And in the words of Lord Acton, there is that real uh, reckoning that people who are entrusted with absolute power are corrupted absolutely. So it is both a solution. You need power to pursue whatever ideas or ideals you have for society, because you cannot do that without power. But at the same time, once you have that, it is a very corrosive one. So much as in the history of Western civilization, especially the founding United States of America, the founding fathers of the United States of America understood that this power must be, appropriately designed in a government. In the government, they conceive of the government as being composed of three branches: the executive, the legislative, and the judiciary. The legislative, the one that is empowered to make laws for the nation; the president, executive, the one empowered or tasked to execute those laws; and then there is the judiciary, the Supreme Court, tasked or who has the responsibility and the power to interpret what those laws mean. So that's how they conceived of their government. So that's end now our session of what politics is. Again, politics is a struggle for power. And by power, we mean as the ability to influence and control the minds and actions of others. It is at the very theoretical and principled level. And at the practical level, we can understand politics as who gets what, when, and how. And as a matter of management system, it's actually like a balancing act between efficiency and effectiveness, given that political actors, like everything else and everyone else, have limited resources. They cannot dispense unlimited resources to convince or influence people. So that's our episode number 1 for our season on the ideas that matter.